2, 1. Nearly there, nearly there. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Action. I am Garry Kousoulou. I'm a dispensing optician with 3 decades of optical knowledge, and I am joined by an amazing guest today. An amazing guest. We haven't been friends for very long, and I'm sad about that actually, because there's a lot of wisdom there. I'm going to hand over to Roy. Roy, will you give us, for those that don't know you, who you are and who you're representing this evening?
Well, today, Garry, again, thank you for inviting me along. It's great to be with you, and we've come across each other a couple of times in recent years, and each time it's always been memorable. And so I'm really pleased that I've been invited along today. Yeah, today, I'm here on behalf of the Ophthalmic Antiques International Collectors Club. Mm-hmm. It really is a mouthful. And they've been around for 42 years.
Were you the founder?
And I'm not a founder, but I joined 40 years ago, so I'm pretty there in the early days. A fella called Davidson founded it, and he founded it based on the demand that he was receiving for people who were interested in ophthalmic antiques. And we're talking all sorts here, spectacles, binoculars, you name it. There's an interest around the world for the history of ophthalmic antiques. And so we've been going for 42 years now, and we've produced 172 quarterly magazines that are edited by our members, produced by our members, and these articles come from all over the world. We've got experts everywhere. And it's so fun because they're all passionate. They don't necessarily belong to the optical industry. They're just passionate about what they do and about sharing knowledge and getting together. We, from my own part, I've been in the industry for going on 54 years. And I started collecting in my early weeks of being in the optical industry. Somebody actually came along and asked me...
Have you always collected things? Have you always been someone that holds things along or sees a trinket and thinks, well, that's an interesting thing to collect?
Oh, it would be so easy. No, I've stuck, by exception, I've stuck to optical antiques. And the first time... But my father was a bit of a wheeler dealer and used to go to sales and bring the stuff home and get us kids to polish it up or sand it down and paint it. And so we all had an interest. And before the internet, we were all people who would go to antique shops and the like, looking for bargains. And in my case, my first offering was a gentleman brought a couple of articles to the practice and asked me to value them. And I said, I've got no bloody idea. What do you mean me value them?
What were they? Do you remember what they were?
Yeah, I do. The first one was a silver item, and I knew it was silver because it was hallmarked. And subsequently, I learned it's 1780. So really nice old piece. A spectacle frame, a pair of silver spectacles.
Do you know who owned it?
No, don't know a thing about it. And the second piece was the most wonderful handmade wooden box with jewels across the front, and inside there was a frame, and it was gold. So I said to the fella, this is silver, so that's nice and easy. This, though, is a handmade box with jewels on it, and inside is this gold item, a gold pair of spectacles. Now, you don't put a cheap pair of gold frames into a box like this. This has to be solid gold. And off he went. And 3 or 4 hours later, he'd been around the antique shops and he came back and he said, gosh, thank you so much. That just opened doors for me, he said. And here's the silver pair for you as a gift.
No way.
And that was my first item, and it's still there in my collection. And from there, I've been collecting for 53 years. And it's wonderful.
I think that's so lovely because there's so much depth to you, Roy. You know this industry. You know the people in this industry. And I was hoping that we could explore some of that too this evening, but let's go with the antiques. So to become a member, it's a small amount.
Yeah, for 20 quid in the UK, you can go online and join. There, you can pay by PayPal. You can pay on using your card. You get regular newsletters. We also do an auction every year, and you can come along and buy things. There's no commission.
That
You can
sounds
sell
fun.
things.
And what's the scale of how much the auction? From what price to what price? What's like the least expensive thing?
From £1 upwards.
And
but
then
you can
what's the most expensive thing you can buy?
Oh, well, that depends what somebody brings on the day, but normally it's a couple of £100 will buy you a star prize.
Is it being organised for this year's?
So we will be in May next year. We will have our AGM, and we have our AGM at the College of Optometrists in Craven Street in London, and there we are guested by the British Optical Association, Neil Handley. He's a world expert on spectacle antiques, and the British Optical Association Museum is the oldest optical museum in the world. And it has something like 35,000 items in its collection. And people can go there and visit. There's no charge for the visit, I understand, but it is by appointment. But it's a wonderful showroom, a wonderful museum. And our members also attend London Open Doors and act as guides there. So we have this wonderful opportunity to share in our love of the industry and our love of our knowledge to the general public. And we get about 500 people through the door in the course of an afternoon.
So when did you become first introduced to the world of optics? How old were you roughly? I won't give away your age, but how old were you?
I was 17, yeah. So 17, I joined.
17, wow.
And
back then there was just glass.
Just glass, yeah. Before plastic, yeah.
Yeah, there was when it came to frames. If you didn't, there was limited choice. But I guess you could have a handmade frame.
Yes, you could get handmade frames. Most frames were supplied on the NHS back then, because we've got to remember we went that far back in the early 70s. We went far after the introduction of the NHS and spectacle wear. And so the majority of people, probably around 80%, purchased a
round seg as well as a D seg? Could you upgrade to
no, round segs then, forget about it. Rarely a D seg. So if we went into the talk about optical lenses, that we had the very early Amiga sort of plastic lenses that you were scared to touch them in case they scratched. So 99% of all lenses supplied back in those days were glass. And now
my copy of Mo J, the ophthalmic lenses, was handed to me. And there's no mention of plastic in it whatsoever.
Yes, well, Mo J.
Maybe that's valuable.
I was very lucky. He was one of my lecturers back in the 70s, along with numerous others. And many of them became members of the Optical Antique Association. So we get first-hand stories of those early days of spectacle wear and education. But we must be reminded that the ABDO, the Association of British Dispensing Opticians, is 100 years old next year. And so
that's really great. I've served on its board for 10 years, so I'm 10% of its board over the last 100 years. I feel quite honoured at that. Have you ever served on their committees?
I've never delved into that side of the optics.
That's what it's missing, Roy. It's not too late.
It's not too late. Never too late. No, but I've trained many DOs and contact lens fitters in the industry. And so I think I've done my share from that side, and they've gone on to work in hospitals and in private practice and in multiples, and it's fantastic that we see these people who have come to the industry and have been trained. They have professional papers, and they are able to carry on with their work, and of course they can go travel worldwide with it. So
absolutely. So if you're a young person, you're watching this, I would really like to have a glimpse of what it was like to be an optician in the 70s, because I joined optics in the 90s, and I can tell you, optometrists, they were gods. Us dispensing opticians weren't as we're low down on the ecosystem. Is that something that happened between the 70s and 90s, or that they used to wear white coats? Like,
yeah,
it was a gulf between them as clinicians. We weren't even regarded as clinicians.
if we go back to the early 70s when I started, there was no advertising.
That's right.
There were no display windows. There was no pricing. You weren't allowed to advertise. You weren't allowed to show your prices. A dispensing optician were highly regarded then. And in the workplace, many practices worked with ophthalmologists. So where we have ophthalmic opticians or optometrists today, 40% of the workforce back in the early 70s were working out of medical eye centers and working directly with ophthalmologists and referring to hospitals. So you went dressed for the occasion. If you were working in London with maybe a company, Clement Clark, which is one of the oldest companies.
I only know them for tissue paper now.
Yeah, well, they would you would turn up to work there in your morning coat and suit, and you would brush the outside of the store and clean the window before you opened the practice. Everything was highly polished, and if we go back a little earlier, we were supplying gold and tortoiseshell and high quality spectacles from Germany with brands such as Zeiss and Marwitz. These were very, very expensive, high-quality items and very collectible today. So going back to the ophthalmic antiques, it's all encompassed with the changes that have occurred over maybe, let's keep it simple, the last 200 years. Ophthalmic opticians and optometrists really didn't come into being until the late 1800s. There were people working out of practices or shops, and you will see on every high street, often you will see adverts for jeweler optician, chemist optician. And these practices or businesses were mixed. And so often with no qualifications at all. And so it wasn't until the advent of the NHS that people had to start being registered and practice. And it was on the old grandfather clause. You just moved from family member to family member. Some qualifications did come in.
Remember when we were deregulated? This was before my time.
Yes, and there was a deregulation period, and many people will buy ready readers off the counter. So around 15 million of those are sold each year in the UK. But if we go back to the 1700s, all the spectacles were, by exception, ready readers. And you chose a pair off a trade stand.
Myopia, was that treated at all? It's just hypermetropia.
Mainly hypermetropia. And if you were really lucky and you had some money, you might get some myopic lenses. So there was some myopia, but very, very rare. By exception, it was hypermetropia. And reading glasses, as we know it, really didn't come into being because most people died early. So where we have people today needing reading glasses as they get into their 40s and 50s, back then they were dying much earlier. And the earliest spectacles that we know of are 1230 from the archaeological dig at Cologne Cathedral. And as a member of our society, I was able to go there and handle them. Wow. They've never been on public display, but our group were able to handle these spectacles.
The RX in there?
There were no RX in there.
No
But what we
RX.
do know from this experience is that there was a man working at outside Cologne Cathedral, and he had a workman's pit, and the broken pieces he threw into his pit. So, he was serving the pilgrims from across Europe and beyond to come to Cologne Cathedral. So my belief, and I have no evidence to support it, is that there may be a workman's pit outside every major cathedral across Europe. And I would love for somebody to find another one that we can identify. And from that 1230, the earliest after that is 1274, known as the Trig spectacles from Trig Lane in our very own London.
Lovely.
Picked up by a mudlarker on the Thames bank.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm a bit loose on the detail, but didn't Christians believe that we shouldn't enhance anything to human beings, and it was frowned upon to wear glasses because we are God's creation and it can't be improved? Am I wrong? Am I going in the wrong direction here?
Well, that's a new one for me. So what we do know is that the early monks, who were the earliest people particularly in the UK and across Europe, who were educated, who were able to read and write, they were using simple forms of spectacles back in the 1200s. So,
so can we talk a little bit about refraction?
So, yes, we can try refraction.
So spectacles, I guess, a frame, face shape, lenses was a challenge. But how do we get the right refraction? When did that start happening?
That didn't start until the 1800s. The first ophthalmoscope was around 1830, 1835. So the first time that you were able to examine the back of the eye came around that time. It's not. I'm not saying it wasn't possible to do it before then, but the people who were doing it before were those very special scientists who were looking at different ways.
Have you handled like an early day ophthalmoscope?
Well, the earliest one, we understand there were only around 50 made.
Wow. At
that time, and my guess is at this moment in time there's only 4 or 5 in existence, and they are in museums by exception.
And was there a trial frame as we know it?
A trial frame as we know really was much later, 1880, I think.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we didn't have the big trial frames as we know today. And of course, that's been superseded now as we go into practice. Many practices don't have trial frames. They have phoropter heads. And the first phoropter head came in the early 1900s. So around 1920, 1930.
I'm surprised at that. That's actually later than I would have thought.
Yeah, people felt that you had to be modern, you had to move forward, you had to have something different to establish yourself as an optician. Because even then there was competition, and we have well-known. So spectacle making in the UK came through the realms of astronomy and things, where people started to make telescopes, and so when they started making telescopes, they also had the skills to make spectacles.
And which country led the way in this? Was it the UK? Was it
Europe? The country that led the way with lenses was Italy, and with spectacles as we know them today, the quality spectacles, I would put through into Germany and to Nuremberg. Nuremberg was the earliest worshipful company around 1623, and the worshipful company of spectacle makers in the UK came a little bit later, but within 10 years of
I think you know Mastermind. Dum 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 dum.
Yes.
You seriously should think about being on Mastermind, because I'm hanging on every word. I don't know if you're watching this ever and you're not an optician. You're stepping us through time, and it's so magical. You really know your stuff, and I'd love to see your Mastermind as a specialist subject, ophthalmic history. Wow. There can't be too many people in the world that know as much as you about this topic.
Well, who knows? We don't know, but there are others, and our club have around 150 members, and so many of those are very expert in their fields.
I'm
And
so
so,
excited to come to your auction, because what we will try and do is be like Christie's, and what we'll do is we'll put it live, and it will go out to a global audience, and you can make bids over the phone, just like at Christie's.
yeah, well, you'd have to become a member to do that. So you've got to become a member.
Last time I checked, I thought I was a member. I still get the
Yeah.
magazine.
But worldwide, yeah, we want further membership. We have members across the world, from Japan and Australia, from the United States, through Europe, Belgium, Holland, Germany. They're brilliant and very specialized. And what's interesting is each year we arrange visits, and we go and visit universities and private collections. So in the last few years, I've been very lucky to go to Prague, to Brussels, to Cologne and Berlin, to Amsterdam and Utrecht, even to Great Old Britain, and visit the storerooms of the British Science Museum. And often we're being asked to tell them what they've got, because often they have no idea what they've got. These items have never been on public display. The curators don't know, it's not their speciality, so they don't know what these items are. And we're able to give them more informed information. One of the things I love with the whole aspect of the industry and the changes that occurred is I remember about 30 years ago, I went to see a fellow called Joshua Silver. He is the inventor of the liquid lens, the adjustable liquid lens that is in our papers. But his idea was that this would go to the third world. And so you were able to go to the third world and hand over a pair of spectacles that the owner was able to adjust for his prescription or her prescription at that moment. And their offices are close to where I live. And so I made contact with them recently, and they said, yes, we've got all that early stuff, and we've got it in our display cabinets in their offices. So I'm hoping to have a little invite to go and see the offices and this early stuff that I saw 30 years ago. And that's what makes this industry, it's changing all the time, but also the antique industry is changing all the time. Yesterday's antiques have moved on. We used to be collecting pre-1949, or when I started, pre-1925 to be an antique. Now, if you're collecting in the 70s, they're vintage and antiques, and we have many worldwide collectors
I look forward to bringing my collection. I've got lots of frames and ophthalmoscopes and rets, and I just kept hold of it. I don't know why, and it's there, and I've got old-fashioned trial frames. Now, when I started in the early 90s, it's really funny that when I handle a frame of when I was a pre-reg, and all the memories come back. So I know that there was Giorgio Armani was the first designer frame ever, and then sometimes I handle the frames that I dispensed 30 years ago. How does it feel for you when you first started as a young man and you're handling those frames? Does it bring back memories?
Oh yeah, well, luckily I work in the industry as well, so every day that you work, it's a memory journey, and that's what makes it so enjoyable. But also, tomorrow is a new journey, and so whether you're an antique collector, and I'm here, as I say, on behalf of the Ophthalmic Antiques Association, every day is a journey, because who knows what's going to come through the door tomorrow. And so every part of it is a journey. And when I handle old frames, when I see an old frame from 50 years ago, I had a client the other day that picked up, brought her grandmother's glasses in to have them fitted with lenses. And it was a good quality lens and a good quality frame. And it was made by Alga. Now, Alga is a factory that was up until recently in North London at the Lionworks in Stratford. And it's recently closed a couple of years ago and is now transported to Italy. And they make what we were known today as Savile Row frames. But this was a factory that opened about 1900 in the UK and had brought equipment from Germany and that equipment is still working today, 125 years on.
Incredible engineering.
Incredible engineering. And I was lucky to be able to
What I've noticed about really old frames from the 50s and the 40s is how tiny they are. They're a 40i size. They're tiny. People were much smaller. That's my observation. I wish I'd show you some of my collection. They're really small. Is that something just because I've fallen on it, or is that right that people were far smaller?
No, it really is about changes in diets. So we see across the Western world that people are taller, they are heavier, they carry more weight, but they are taller. So each generation that goes by is eating better. If we go back to pre-Second World War, people's diets were meager, and when you went through the war years and then there was rationing, you really didn't have the opportunity for spurts of growth were low. But what we do see is that changes in habits of diet do change people's body shapes and heights. And we can see across Europe that some nations are much taller than others. And that is down to diet primarily. They eat better. They eat more wholesome.
So if you're watching this and you are as fascinated as me, in the podcast notes, there'll be a link to the charity's membership. I encourage you to join. We probably will, I've got to get it past the committee, but if you join anywhere you are in the world, you could be part of that auction.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
As long as you're a member, you can bid on this stuff, and it might be quite fun to have your first piece.
Yes.
Your first something or other. Wow.
And you can access all our historical magazines online, and you will get a hard copy every quarter. And this makes it so valuable that you've got something that you can read. And if you it can be on your coffee table or in your office, you can share the information. And it is written by our members from all over the world.
So tell us about your supervisor when you started in the 70s. Did they ever share stories with you of how things have changed and how, because my supervisor, I remember my very first day, her name was Haley. She's my pre-reg super. I said, what's your favorite thing about the job? And she said, adjusting frames. I love adjusting frames. I didn't understand it at the time. And do you remember your supervisor? Do you remember some fond memories? All I was allowed to touch for the first week was my optometrist's RGPs, and I used to clean them and hoover up. That was it.
Right.
I wasn't allowed near a client, a patient.
I think that is typical of most of us who, when you first go into business, you're the coffee boy, you're the cleaner, But I was very excited about fitting frames and styling very, very early on, and looking for opportunities to change things, for introducing tints, introducing plastic lenses when they came in, introducing contact lenses, because we must remember that most people had never seen or heard of a contact.
Wow, you really, really got to see fun stuff. So there was just a 1.5. Do you remember when 1.6 became a thing?
Absolutely, yes.
Tell us about that when people could get thinner lenses.
You change people's lives when you could get thinner lenses in the profession, you change people's lives. What we've got to remember is back in the 70s, what we see today as a routine cataract operation wasn't a routine cataract operation. You were told to lie down for a week, and they didn't put an implant. You were given very strong glasses for wearing. So where we have an implant today, you would leave that, you'd come home from the hospital and you would need a pair of +20s with thick pebble lenses. And that's what people used to call them, pebble lenses, because they looked like a pebble. And it wasn't until the 80s that we started to see the implants. And from there, you will be knowledgeable on the first implants that came along, and we changed people's lives, and that's what the industry is about: changing people's lives. Whether you're fitting a pair of spectacles, fitting contact lenses, and advising people and supporting them, and of course. We also have people with low visual aids that have difficulty, and our jobs are to advise them. And all of these are encompassed within the optical collecting world. For instance, I was able to pick up recently on eBay. I will say it's eBay.
Brilliant.
There are other formats, and I was able to pick up a handmade brass braille ruler, and I was like a little boy. I was very excited that this had come into my hands and into my collection. Wow. Because
you recognized it straight away. Others wouldn't have known what it was.
Nobody would have known what it was, but I recognized it straight away. And it's wonderful. Yeah, so the changes are there. And it continues to change at a pace. You know, we are now in a situation due to appliances that in the 18 to 35 age group, that 50% of that age group will be myopic by 2050. This is causing huge problems for the future, with problems with macular degeneration, retinal detachments, and the like. And we now have lenses are available for myopic control.
Well, the shocking thing is that they believe that litigation will happen. So down the line, in 10 years' time, we will be sued if we don't tell our patients about this for negligence.
Yeah, well,
the
that's
optician
dreadful.
that doesn't know about controlling myopia lens, if that doesn't worry you, I don't know what does. I'll just say now, Sir Harold Ridley. He invented the cataract lens, and I got to meet his son in a lift by pure coincidence, and so I certainly feel quite attached to that, and hopefully if you're 100% optical, I'll invite him. I'd like to introduce you to it was as if I was there, because his dad said, look, you're going to come to this surgery. He was only 7 years old, and he watched the world's first cataract.
Well, I think he created that because in the Second World War, there were from pilots.
Correct.
when their screens shattered, the acrylic from the
the bad luck of that that pilot. So the pilot was scrambled and went up and was shot down, and he was shot down, and then he got in another plane. He survived. He was fine, and he ran in another plane and forgot to put his goggles on.
All right.
So I'm hearing this first hand, like it's amazing. So So Ridley's son is telling me, look, he went up in the Spitfire and he got shot down, and then he was so brave, he got back in the thing, forgot to put his goggles on. He needed 17 operations to remove the perspex. And then on the last operation, he noticed there was no infection. I'll leave it there. And that isn't that story. I'd like to ask you, was there a big difference between the invention of 1.6 to 1.67? Because when I started, the thinnest lens you could get, I think, was 1.67.
Well, you could get glass. You could get some glass thin lenses, and if we remember,
1.9s, yeah, 1.9s were a thing.
And you could also, we had smaller frames, so the surfacing was more important. So where we take a stock lens today, the surfacing was far more important, and you could change the surfaces to get the optimum thickness of the lens. But yeah, they were game changers. So that when we came back through into the 80s, to fit somebody with a high prescription, whether it was short-sighted or long-sighted, was a game changer that we had choices to be able to fit their lenses. And of course, we could do tints, we could do so many things that suddenly changed the market, and changed it in many ways, because we introduced workshops to practices. Where it was around the same time that you could go along and get your photographs developed at the same time. Well, the public was hungry for photographs at the same time, spectacles, same day service, shoes repaired at the same time.
Just if you remember, Bernard Matiz, something, that's his name. I think he invented the varifocal. I got to meet him. When I first entered optics, there was only the Comfort. There was and an AO Pro 15. And the Navigator. There was like 5
they
lenses.
were all names. I recognise them.
That was it. That when the varifocal came, do you remember the situation? How were people? Was it really hard to adapt to it? Because the right lens was just a flipped version of the left lens.
Yes. Well, strangely, varifocals have been around for nearly 70 years now. So we all think that they're new and but the problems that we had then are the same as they are today, and you could get used to them. And it was a change, because that enabled you to be able to see around you and read at the same time, without having to worry about having a bifocal.
Can I share a story with you?
Please.
I was on the board of Abdo, and we got to meet this chap who invented varifocals. And everyone asked him such clever questions. And it was my turn to ask this man, this inventor of the varifocal, what I should ask. And I think, oh God, they're academics. I'm just a regular DO. So I said to him, look, the little circles that are 34 millimeters apart, why is that? And he said, you're the first person that's ever asked me that, ever. And I'm waiting for a really clever answer back. He said, I just like the number 34.
There you go.
So there you go. Those little dots that are 34 mils apart, it's only because he liked the number.
I love that, yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And that's something I didn't know, that he just liked the number. But yes, those dots are there. And of course, that is a problem sometimes. Some clients notice those little dots. How they manage it, I don't know. They
do. I've had requests in my time for them to be removed.
That's it.
And that's exceptional. And I spoke to my old pre-reg supervisor, Mr. Ghani, if you're watching, hello. And he can tell. He phoned me the other day and he said, Gary, you did your pre-reg here 30 years ago, and patients still ask for you. I said, get out of it. Like, I was so passionate about my job. There was one chap, and he was allergic to plastic nose pads. So I made him a pair of wooden nose pads. Just made him. I just done it. And he still remembers me. And I bet that's the same with you. You were telling me a story the other day that people's children are coming in. They're coming, and you dealt with their grandfather and their mum. And isn't it wonderful?
What I can say is that I've worked in one area. I first worked there in 1977, and now we're in 225, 26, and I'm seeing people who I served and provided spectacles when they were children. They're now in their 60s. I knew their parents and I knew their grandparents, and now I know their children and their grandchildren. And I think this, in this period of a world where we think of change, this isn't as unusual as many people believe. I think there are many professionals and bricklayers and you name it, mechanics, who have all done this. They become trusted parts of people of the community. And I think if there's one part of the industry that I particularly like, is that we become part of your community, and we can value that. This idea of racing to the top all the time isn't necessary. Be part of your community and enjoy life.
I don't know what it was like before, and that's why I'm so fascinated. I build relationships with my patients without breaking a professional boundary. But there were kids, and they used to come in, give me a hug. We used to and I'd just see them grow, and now I know their children like you, and I can walk down the street, and I'm so happy to see a patient. I know some clinicians that just hate seeing their patients out of work. Can I ask you, Roy, do you build those professional relationships, those nice relationships with your patients?
Well, as I say, I don't think I'm unique. Yes, I do. And if they see me out and about in the locality and stuff, and you go maybe to your local pub, and they're often will see you, and they often buy you a drink. Yes, if you go to your local football club, you support your local football club. You go to your local music venue, you go to your church or your mosque, or it all is part of life and the mix of life. And the one thing about Ophthalmic Antiques is it comes from every part of the life and every part of the world. So you can collect, if I can just shift, you can collect spectacles and snow goggles from Alaska and the Inuit people. You can go to China and Japan and have ancient optical items. You can go anywhere in the world and you will find something different. And that's what makes collecting ophthalmic antiques so exciting, because it is so different everywhere you go. There may be similarities, but it is so different.
So I have a personal interest in the Snellen chart. Last year, on the New Year's Day parade. No, this year I have to think. January the 1st on the New Year's Day parade, we were really proud that we got 100 optical professionals to wear different Snellen charts in different languages.
There you go.
One here. I didn't realise that they all wore these T-shirts.
Yes,
that's a Hebrew one. Tell me about the Snellen chart. Is anything worth any money, like on a Snellen chart?
No, I'm not aware of monetary value on a Snellen chart. You know, when I say there is some value, yes, of course, there's £100 here and £200 there and the like. If we go back to 1900, you will find Snellen charts with candlestick holders around them. So with intricate brass fittings.
That's invaluable. That's priceless.
They're brilliant. Of course they are.
You can still get something with candlelight. Wow.
But what is more interesting is exactly what you've done. The Snellen chart across the world is in different languages.
Do you know the Chinese use a fish? So it's like tumbling ease. So the fish points this way. You got points there, because a lot of people are illiterate in China.
Well, we mustn't forget in the where we are in the UK, a lot of people were illiterate, and so a lot of the charts would have pictures of dogs, cats, local characters, boats, houses. Wonderful. And because people couldn't read. And even today, we have people who are unable to read and write. So we mustn't. So often you will ask somebody, can you sign your name? And strangely, they say, no, I can't. I'll just leave my mark. Wow. And they leave a cross. Or they say, and we ask them simple questions like, can you read the printed matter? And they will hesitate and say, I'm sorry, I can't read. So there has to be a means around it, and you've summed it up. There are charts that are supplied to help people with those difficulties.
I hope that never gets thrown in a skip.
Yes.
Never. If you're watching this and you've got a practice that wants to, maybe in their old storeroom, want to get rid of things, can they approach you, Roy?
Oh, I'd love them to. I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they're in a practice that's 130 years old. Well, how wonderful is that? And they say, we must have some stuff up in the attic. And when I see an item, often people put where you weren't allowed to advertise, they put their name on the case. And so you can now, particularly with the internet, with museums, you can source further information. And I picked up one recently. It was Thick Opticians of a certain town. And I went into their museum and they said, is there anything you can do for me? And I said, yes, I'd really be interested if you've got any information on these opticians. And they were able to tell me that it opened, first of all, in 1855. It stayed open until 1955 and had been run by 3 generations of the same family. Incredible. From the same place.
Is glazing equipment of interest to you? Because sometimes I'll go to lots of opticians and I'll see a graveyard of old equipment, like for scimitar. Is that interesting? Like what kind of things is missing from your collection that you'd like to see?
Oh, the truth is there is so much. But the problem with equipment is that it's storage space. And this is a problem for the collectors, is that we as the manufacturing processes have been superseded with modern computerization. And so modern computerization reduces the size of all the manufacturing items, and suddenly the manufacturing tools that we've used in the past become obsolete. And this is difficult, but the simple answer is, if somebody wishes to contact me, you can contact me through our magazine, through our internet. And do
you have a wish list? I really want a Snellen chart with a candle behind it. That's in my wish list now. Do you have a wish list of things that you'd love to own in your collection?
Oh, I think a pair of 1700 nose spectacles would be really useful. A masterpiece, what we call a masterpiece from the 1500s, would be great, particularly in leather. They came in 2 colors, red and black. Wow. One for myopia, one for hypermetropia, and they were like a carpenter making a small item to demonstrate how skilled he was at working. The masterpieces were trainees who were showing off their skills. Yes. I've only ever seen 2 of these items in museums, never been on public display. If you've got one in the bottom of your drawer at home, please give me a call.
We certainly need to wrap things up, because I don't know about the audience, but I want to do a part 2 and follow Roy through his career, he worked for David Cloulos, he's worked for lots of opticians. He's had and the career isn't over yet. He's still working. So I want to be like you, Roy. I hope there's a part 2 to this, but today is certainly about the antiques. Can I ask you, what's your favourite experience in optics? Does one spring to mind?
As an optician or as an ophthalmic antique collector?
Both. How about that? We'll be greedy, and that's a lovely way to end the episode.
I love touring the factories of northern Italy, door knocking at the cooperative movements in the Cadora regions into the Dolomites there, in snow, and knocking the doors of factories and finding what they had behind those doors. And they would open the door, and by exception, no one spoke any English, and I certainly didn't speak Italian. But the first thing they gave you on a cold winter's morning was a glass of wine. And it was wonderful. It was the most wonderful experience. And you learned so much about their families and their factories. And in this world, communication is so important. There's always a way to communicate. And from those visits, we were able to buy frames, design frames, and supply frames into the UK. And I think that was one of the most exciting things I enjoyed doing. Yes, tremendous.
I'm certainly interested in what makes people outstanding exceptional, overachiever. You are all of those things. You're an overachiever. You're outstanding. You're amazing. If you're watching this and you just want, I certainly do, to know how to be an outstanding, exceptional optician. Do you have what's your definition of that? Of an outstanding, exceptional, overachieving optician?
I think it's well, we talk about opticians, but I would put it into any walk of life. Believe in yourself. Enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, go and find something else, because we only have one life, and the important thing is to enjoy what you're doing and love your family.
Make comments down below. This has been an exceptional podcast from us. If you've got any comments, please make sure you make them down there. And then Roy, you know, I make a book every year, the Who's Who of Optics. We're going to certainly feature Roy in that. So have a lovely evening, everyone. Roy, I hope
Thank you all
enjoyed
very much for listening. Thank you.